There we go. If we look at the first slide,
You'll lead first.
you'll see hundreds of dots. Each of these dots represents a law, a rule, or an agency. And together, you could say that they form a constellation. It's pretty vast, it's pretty scattered, and it's hard to navigate. And what this demonstrates is that over decades, well-intentioned decisions have created a constellation of regulation. And whilst it's impressive in scale, in practice, it's confusing and costly. If we go to the next slide, this is where the picture goes much deeper. Shows the added secondary legislation, and here the complexity multiplies. Rules linked to rules, they're even more intertwined, interconnected, and overlapping. It's not just scattered, it's tangled. And for businesses and communities, it means more time, more cost, and more frustration. The New Zealand Institute of Economic Research has indicated that the cost of the complexity is $5 billion a year in compliance and up to $12 billion in lost economic potential, which is money that could be building businesses, creating jobs, and improving lives. So our purpose as a ministry is to redraw these maps so that businesses and communities and everyday New Zealanders can navigate the rules and regulations easily. When the map's clear, the economy will shine brighter and the innovation will flow and pave the way to healthier, wealthier, and happier lives for New Zealanders. As you said, Mr. Chairman, and you're welcome, we started on the 1st of March, and over the last 16 months that we're looking at, we've already made change happen. Just run you through a couple of examples. So we've removed unnecessary advertising restrictions for medical conferences, unlocking millions in future revenue and helping bring major events back to New Zealand. We've stopped unnecessary new rules for buy now, pay later services that would have raised cost for consumers. Simplified anti-money laundering requirements for property transactions and gift cards, reducing compliance costs while maintaining strong protections. Personal favourite of mine is working with the Ministry of Justice to raise outdated carer income thresholds. Nearly 500,000 carers in New Zealand, and this makes their lives easier. It means they can spend more time caring for their loved one. Other simple rules that we've had changed, scaffolding, garden sheds, making life easier for businesses and homeowners. And in addition, we've got our large regulatory reviews, which are also unlocking significant economic potential across key sectors. So reducing red tape for hairdressers, creating more harmony with international rules in the importation of agriculture and horticultural products, and simplifying rules for busy ECE teachers. What's been actually a great part for us of the last 16 months is how New Zealanders have been engaging with us and speaking up. Through our red tape tip line, we've received over 1,400 tips, and through our regulatory reviews, we've heard thousands of real life stories of frustration and wasted effort, which we're able to act on. So we've changed legislation, removed regulation, and decreased time spent on paperwork. Just last week, we published that across 12 issues, and that's not everything we're working on, our reforms will deliver 223 to 337 million in net benefits over the next decade. And given that the cost of setup for the ministry and running for the 16 months is around 20 million, that's a return of $11 to $17 for every dollar spent. Yeah, and whilst numbers are important, actually, it's the story that they tell. It's a story about stronger business and a system that's improving how it works for people, not against them. But you've seen from those first two slides that I showed that the opportunity is huge and there is much, much work to do. We need to build regulatory systems that are simple, that are easy to understand and follow, that are fairer, protecting people and the environment, and also are future ready to enable growth and innovation. Because the rules are things that actually impact people's everyday lives. And if we get it right, we can create a healthier, wealthier, and happier New Zealand. So thank you very much, and we look forward to your questions.
Oh, thank you very much, Chief Executive Moss. And just to reiterate that we have got till 1 o'clock, and so we've got plenty of time to get through our scrutinisation of this relatively new ministry. I'm going to go to Labour's lead, Dr. Duncan Webb.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Moss. Look, I wanted to start with the relationship with Māori. And I guess my first question, I'll just give you an opportunity to comment really. Do you think that the ministry's performed poorly in respect of its treaty obligations? And do you have any particular work programs to improve your Māori Crown capability?
Good work.
So what we have done has been very tailored to the New Zealanders who have engaged with us, and actually they've come from all walks of life. And I mean, I think we have found the volume quite challenging. We haven't realised, I mean, 1,400 tips, we never expected that from the red tape tip line, 2,500 submissions on ECE. I mean, it's all great stuff. So I think we need to continue to work on our systems and processes to deal with that enthusiasm from all across New Zealanders and all New Zealand groups. We are a very small ministry, so we're less than 100 people. So one of the things that we do in terms of capability and capacity across a number of fronts, including working with iwi and Māori, is work alongside and lean into the competency, capability and the depth that's in the public service. And I'd be very happy to hand over to my colleague Paula, who can talk you through a couple of the initiatives that we've got in conjunction with some of our public service agencies.
In respect of?
In respect of work,
relations.
yes, in respect of that, yes.
Yes, certainly. So as my colleague has said, Māori Crown capability is a key area of focus for us. What we're doing at the moment is, and we're very pleased to be one of the first agencies who's actually working with Te Puna Kōkiri to pilot the Te Tautahi Orowo framework. That's a Māori public policy framework that guides government decision making. We're on that journey with them at the moment, and that's with a specific focus on embedding that into our policy work and also into our engagement work. As I said, we're really pleased to be one of the first agencies that's doing that. We're also looking at other opportunities to invite people into our agency to work with us. And
is that in response to your action plan in respect to the public service census, or is that a different work program?
I think it's part of, so we get insights from many people, and we did get insights from staff as well. And I'm sure you'll have looked at our census results, which we were really pleased with as a new ministry. So we had one of the highest participation rates, but we also had one of the highest engagement scores. And we did it very early on in our existence. So we were able to take the feedback from staff to form the development plan for the agency. But we've also been taking feedback, as I say, from people that have dealt with us. I mean, those many people who've engaged with us through reviews.
I'm assuming you weren't pleased with your results in respect of Māori Crown capability.
I think, look, we're a very new agency, so we had no expectations about what the results would be. Well, I think getting those...
I compared your results with the Social Investment Agency, which is also a brand new agency, June 24, and it largely met or exceeded public service averages. If you look at your results, the new agency, the agency's Treaty of Waitangi responsibilities, people who understand how its agency's Treaty of Waitangi responsibilities apply to its work, was less than half of your staff, whereas the public service average is 77%. So have you got a problem that you need to address in terms of your staff understanding what it means to apply to treaty principles to its work?
So I think a couple of issues there that you've raised is I wouldn't say that we're comparable to the Social Investment Agency. The Social Investment Agency actually had a forerunner called the Social Wellbeing Agency that also had a forerunner called the Social Investment Agency. So a number of, they weren't starting from scratch. They had a number of processes.
Are you concerned?
And
you've got a fail mark. Are you concerned about how you're doing? I
wouldn't see that as a fail mark. What I think is we got very, very high participation rates in our census, we did it very early on, and it's great to have that pathway forward, which we're investing in a number of areas to make ourselves, the best small public service agency there can be. I mean, we're investing in technology to deal with the volume of submissions, as Paul has outlined. We're piloting and one of the first actual agencies to work with Te Puni Kōkiri on their new framework.
Look, I'm concerned that you think you're doing things fine. One of the ones that cropped up was your staff, the number of staff who felt that the leaders in their agency, that's the people around this table, show a commitment to strengthening the relationship between Māori and the Crown was 29%. So that's less than 1 in 3 of your staff think that you're committed to Māori Crown relations. The public service average is 68%. That's a woeful failure. And what you're telling me is, we're doing okay given we are new. I mean, I guess my question is, as the leader, what are you doing about that question, your leadership in things Māori?
I'm supporting us working with Te Puni Kōkiri, being one of the early adopters of the new framework, for example.
I mean, here's an interesting one. Staff are supported to improve Aotearoa Māori, 13%. Public service average, 64%. What do you take Te Reo Māori lessons?
I have done in the past. I'm not currently taking them.
Do you fund them for your staff?
I'll just hand over to Paula, who can talk you through some of the work that we're doing in that area.
Yes, we do fund Te Reo classes for our staff. They are optional, and we offer those Māori classes to employees to attend either in person or via online self-paced modules, depending on what's going to work best for them.
So in terms of just my last question on this, Mr. Chair, and then I'll hand over. In terms of your delivering Crown Māori relations engagement training opportunities, are you happy that you have now done that in accordance with your action plan, which said it would be done by October 2025?
So yes, I am comfortable with that. What we had is we recently had a day where we did have the team from Te Puni Kōkiri in, and they got quite a lot of time with all of our employees who attended on that day, and that was everybody from the administration.
Is that it?
No, I'm just saying that's one thing you were asking. I said, are we comfortable? Yes. Are we doing things? Yes, we are.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Subs on sub of
Yes.
Rawiri Waititi.
Well, he's opened the door straight off the bat, so I'll go for it. Kia ora tēnā koutou. Why, I'm finding it hard to understand the questions and the answers that Dr. Webb has just asked, because here's a question for you. Why has there been no mention of Māori o te tiriti in your annual review? It's very hard to track any of the answers that you've given when there's no mention of it in this particular briefing document. And so, could you answer that question just first of all, please?
I mean, the template that we've used for the annual report is the one that's mandated, and we have fulfilled the requirements. I'm really happy to look at it for next time. I hadn't picked that up. A number of the things that we've delivered have helped multiple people across the economy and in the community, including Māori.
Can I ask, have there been any specific directives to repeal, amend clauses and regulations that mention te tiriti o Waitangi?
No.
Have there been any specific directive or repeals to amend clauses and regulations that mention equitable outcomes?
No.
So why has the Ministry of Regulation not the subject of the baseline? Can I ask you a question? Why is the Ministry of Regulations not the subject of baseline saving targets that other ministries are required to meet?
We weren't last year, but we are this year.
You are this year.
Yeah.
So in that case, what impact will the changes, because I heard you mention early childhood, which allows us to enter into that. What impacts will the changes to the early childhood education sector have on kaiako pay in kohanga reo? Yes.
Our work didn't review that, but there is a funding review that's going on in early childhood education, so that's more likely to directly impact the question that you've asked.
In specific, kohanga reo.
With the funding review, we are not leading the funding review. The Ministry of Education are leading the funding review. So I'm not quite, I don't know the details.
Is there any responsibility that the regulatory standards has in that particular space?
Not at the moment.
Not in
no.
early childhood. Okay, kia ora. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rawiri. We're going to go to Chloe Swap.
For the $2.1 million that have been spent on consultancy and contractors, how much of that was spent on consultancy and contractors for the regulatory standards bill?
I am not sure that we have that breakdown, but we're happy to give it to you. I mean, there was a high spend on consultancy and contractors at the start of the ministry because we didn't have a payroll. We were mainly working, to stand up. The percentage of spend on consultancy and contractors has fallen dramatically since we stood up, but very happy to see if we've got that analysis and bring that back to the committee.
How much then did it cost to pass the regulatory standards bill through to assent?
We don't break out the figures or the bill delivery specifically from our overall policy spend. There was a specific contract in relation to supporting this committee with particularly submissions analysis, which we can have a specific figure on that, but we don't break down the internal policy spend around the bill. We could probably have a go at estimating some figure if that's a request from the committee.
That would be both of those
Well,
things would be good to
Yes,
cover.
and given it was
next year,
only
though.
given it was only passed last month, perhaps you can consider that as part of your annual report next year.
Well, I mean, it still was partially in train at the point of the report, which again is part of the reason that I was referring specifically to the breakdown of consultancy.
Well, they could do it
and
if it's,
costs.
they could do it right to the annual report they've provided.
The bulk of those consultancy costs in relation to the work we did for the committee will actually fall into this annual year because it was after the 1st of July.
Yeah, okay, just
Okay.
take that on.
Yeah. So does the Ministry for Regulation have an AI policy?
Yes, we do have an AI policy.
How do you use AI?
Paula can talk to that.
Sure. Yes, we do have a specific policy and guidelines. We're using AI to make our work more efficient, more innovative and more informed. And of course, our approach follows the Government Chief Digital Officer's AI framework and the Minister for Digitising Government's guidance on the safe use of AI in the public sector and her desire for agencies to embrace AI, but to do that safely and effectively. In addition to making digital tools available to our people, we're also building digital skills across the ministry so that staff can use those AI tools confidently and very responsively in their daily work. In terms of your question around what things we're using AI for, currently we're using it for reviewing and summarising documents, gathering and analysing research, some recording and transcription. We're using Microsoft Copilot Pro. We're using that for the tagging, the theming and the analysis of some submissions for our reviews. Development of reporting and dashboards, and it's really important to point out that all of that work is done within our own secure tenancy, so it's not as if we're going out onto ChatGPT or anything of that nature. It's all within the ministry's
So just to
tenancy.
clarify on that point, all of that intellectual property is owned by the Ministry for Regulation. There's no ownership of that IP by any third parties.
No.
Okay. What criteria are there to escalate or to process the red tape tip line complaints?
Actually, I'd probably call Paul in to actually talk that through, if that's all right. So,
Kia ora, Paul, DC of Reviews System Capability. So the red tape tip line, as Grant mentioned earlier, has been an incredible success in terms of the volume of submissions that have come in. So when they first come in, we triage them. We kind of do a quick scan, see, is this a regulatory issue?
Does AI do that or does a person
No,
do
the person
that?
does it.
Okay.
people do that, yeah.
No, person does this completely. So we have to review it to see, is there really a regulatory issue here? A lot of the initial responses we got were people who had issues, but they weren't regulatory issues.
But they weren't regulatory.
They weren't regulatory issues. There might have been, so for example, a person gave us, they thought there was a regulatory issue around the ACC, but it was actually more an entitlement issue. They didn't quite understand the regulations. So we just got them in contact with the appropriate people at ACC. So we're able to make those connections. So we review it. Is there a regulatory issue here? If yes, then we kind of determine what's the size and scale of this issue. Is this a one-off? Does this impact a number of New Zealanders? What number of New Zealanders will this impact? Then it goes off to we used to go off to a triage group, a group of, I suppose you'd have legal experts, economic experts, policy experts around the table, and would assess each of the submissions that came in to see, is this something that was warranted further investigation? And then if so, then if not, then we'd get in contact with the submitter and we'd say, actually, we don't think there's anything here for us to continue with. If so, we would go, yep, we're going to do an investigation. We've done over 200 investigations since we started the portal. And that results in a number of different potential outcomes. One of those outcomes could be we always get in contact with the regulators, with the agencies, with the policy agencies as well, and go through a pretty robust process to identify the size and scale of the problem. And then, obviously, if there is a primary legislative change required, then we engage with the relevant agency and go through a process. And that takes time. So we've got a number of issues at the moment that haven't been through that process, but we've got a long list of those things.
Can I ask as a follow-up for us to also get access to a flowchart of what that process actually looks like? Yep. Further to that point, I mean, I'm hearing slightly, not potentially contradictory, so maybe you can help to elaborate on this. Do you use AI at all through any of that process?
So with the initial evaluation of submissions when they come into the portal, we don't use AI. Through the investigation process, we do use AI. There's an opportunity for us to use technology to identify, is this with the regulations that are impacted here, what legislation's involved, and we can synthesize that information a lot quicker than someone doing it manually. You'd be amazed you won't be amazed, the complexity of some legislation. And AI does present us huge opportunities to speed that process up. But we have a legal team involved as well, so they kind of check that off, because we realize AI isn't always right. And so is the person always involved assessing these things? Nothing gets through, and it goes through a range of checks before it goes out the door.
Who's on the triage group?
So triage, we have, so we've actually just ceased the triage, how it was working. So triage, essentially, we have chief legal officer was on there, we had economist on there, we have 2 policy professionals. We also have an expert from our system capabilities team. I sit on that group as well, and also the manager of the red tape tip line.
Do they have to explain their rationale for why certain things are being rejected? And
we kind of have some high level criteria that we kind of assess things against.
What are those criteria specifically?
Off the top of my head. So when we look at, one of the key things is economic impact. Yeah. So we look at what type of economic impact here. As I said before, what number of New Zealanders is this issue impacting? Is this a one-off issue, or is this a broader issue? So we go through a range of kind of sense checks like that to determine the size and scale of the issue, to determine whether we want to investigate it, whether it warrants investigation.
When you're talking about economic impact, long-term, short-term, are there any?
All the above. So in terms of with the economic impact, so if we look at, if I pick an example, so like an issue came through around bike helmets, for example, and we could see that there was no real benefit to actually removing the regulations around bike helmets. And the submission that came in was actually around, is there any economic benefit for removing bike helmet regulations? So we look at a range of factors.
Could there theoretically be an instance in which you were to, or the Ministry of Regulation were to recommend increasing regulation? If the point is efficiency, is the point solely to reduce regulation, or is the point efficiency of regulation?
The thing is, regulation is there to prevent harm, and that could be environmental harm, it could be economic harm, it could be social harm. And so we evaluate all of those things. It's not just about deregulation. It is about identifying the most appropriate and proportionate regulation.
So we have had a number of cases where we have recommended that there isn't deregulation. So a submitter, for example, wrote to us and asked us to relax rules in playgrounds, and we recommended that those regulations did not change. So again, we look to see what is fit for purpose, what's good practice, what's got the right balance between all of the competing factors, including safety.
Has the ministry at all been involved in the publicly flagged review of health and safety regulations?
No, we haven't. We have been involved in some workshops around feedback from people who are impacted. The feedback that we've been getting on that is actually less about the regulation, more about the application of regulation. So it's relatively, and actually what we're finding is that's a recurring theme. So what we'd say is probably half of the feedback we're getting is not about the regulations themselves, it's actually about the application of the regulation. And that's been more of the theme of feedback we've received on.
Okay, we've got 3 people down for SUPs here. I'm going to start with Dr. Duncan Webb.
I've got a primary. Kia ora, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just returning to the tip line, I'm curious, given the ministry's focus on kind of effective regulation, whether it is the best way to locate and identify things for improvement. Because, look, I guess the first point is this. In question 37 of the additional questions, you make it clear that you don't measure how many EFTs, you don't know how many EFTs are devoted to this work. Is that accurate?
Well, so I think there's a couple of things I would want to really reinforce about the tip line. So 70% of the people who have contributed to the tip line have said that they have not contacted a government agency about their problem. So I do think that it's a very effective way of giving some New Zealanders a voice who haven't had a voice before. And it's also a really effective way of getting insight about things that are important to a part of the population that may not have been feeding back
Is
to
giving
government.
people a route to complain about government part of your role?
I think giving people a route to say what are the problems that they have with regulation, how they're working for them and against them is absolutely part of our role.
So back to my original question, do you know how much it costs to run the tip line?
So we're a small agency, okay, and what we are doing is a number of our staff work across the many issues that arise. So we're flexible about our resources. So sometimes we get a spike in volume in the red tape tip line and we would allocate some more staff to that. Sometimes we get a spike in volume in agencies asking us to help us with their regulatory capability or strategy, and we would allocate resources. So we're agile in the way that we allocate the resources.
Do you know how much it costs to run the red tape tip line?
What we do know is we know the cost that it is to run all of the ministry, and we know the teams that are allocated in 3 buckets of areas, which is the policy, the regulatory reviews and capabilities, and then the support
Do you know how
services.
much it costs to run the red tape tip line?
Okay, final.
Well, no, look, I know.
We can ask the same
It's not my fault that she
repeatedly.
won't answer the question.
Yeah, but she's answering the question as
No,
best she
okay, well,
can.
let me continue then, because if the answer's no, and in the you've had, as at June, you'd had something like 794 submissions and 150 something, I think, investigations, 159 investigations, and you've had 4 changes made to regulation on the back of that. Is it value for money to have 700 submissions, 159 investigations, and for the sum total of actions to be 4?
So I think it is absolutely value for money. And I just want to
How can you
quote.
tell if you can't tell us how much it costs?
Well,
Hang on, just
at
gonna
the
wait
end
for
of
the
the day,
answer.
the total cost of the ministry is less than $20 million. Okay, so 500,000 caregivers in New Zealand. A woman, and this is a quote from her, she said, "I've been fighting this issue for the last 4 years." She said, "I have been heard many times, but action towards tangible change hasn't come with it until now. You don't know what
Is
it
this
means
the
for
lift?
me."
Is this the lift on the cap for public
Yeah.
service audits?
No, this is a lift on the cap for the financial reporting for caregivers that are managing
public
their
trust audits.
managing their loved ones' assets. It's just one example. So I
How
do
many-
think it is
how many-
value
okay,
for
then,
money.
How many audits by the public trust are no longer needed from 1 October as a result of that change?
So we will work with the public trust to get those numbers. So yeah.
So you don't know that either?
Okay, we're going to go to Dr. Deborah Russell
Oh,
for
thank you. So I'm going to help you out here. How much does the tip line cost one? Let's start with the phone number that you've got.
Okay.
there.
So can I just, sorry, but like, we've been very clear. We've given you our accounts. Now, what we can do is we can respond to New Zealanders, and we can invest the time and energy in responding to New Zealanders and making changes. Or I can get everybody out with a clipboard to allocate their time to the last 30 seconds.
I was going to help you.
That is not what we're planning
we're
to
looking
do.
for a back of the envelope here. So around about how much does it cost to run? Is it a telephone line? Is it?
No,
or
it's not. It's an
a
online
website?
portal.
What is it?
It's an online portal.
And so how much did it cost to set that portal up?
Not very much.
That's not an answer.
Well, I can come back to you with that answer.
Good, if you could.
Okay, she's
So
committed to
you
that.
said you have a number of staff, you have people triaging the tips that come in. So how many people would be looking at that every day or on a regular basis?
As I said, it's varied. It's varied depending on the volume.
Well, someone has
that
to
comes
triage
in.
it. So
Yeah, and it depends. And actually, some days we have meetings where we don't meet about the tip line. We gather all the tips up and then we'll do it midweek. We might do it if we get a lot. When we had the garden sheds, we had to meet a couple of times a day.
Totally.
It all varies.
So do we think it might be about half an FTE a week, or maybe one FTE a week, or maybe
No, we aren't in the business of hypotheticals. We're in the business of making a difference to New Zealand.
I'm sorry, this is just wrong of you to come in claiming that it's value for money and then not to be able to tell us what it costs, or even to give us an estimate of what it costs. So I very much want that as a follow-up question. Some accountant, I could sit down with your accountant if I had access to them and come up with an estimate, and I'm gobsmacked that you would come in here, tell us that it's value for money, and then not be able to tell us how much it costs.
Okay, well, she's given a commitment to some follow-up information.
Other supplementary.
Right, we've got,
on this.
well, we've got people lined up for SUPs, including Dr. David Wilson.
It better be a SUP, because I do have a SUP.
This is a SUP on the tip. We're talking tip lines.
That we just had. I'll come back to what we're actually talking about in terms of regulatory impact analysis and.
No, that's not a SUP. Point of order, Mr.
Was
Chair.
we-
I have a sup on this.
We'll rule that out. This is, we're giving the tip
Duncan
line a
Webb.
lot of publicity here. I will try for Todd and come back to you, David.
Thank you. And you covered at the start, obviously, you had a large volume to the tip line.
Yep.
I also thought it was actually quite telling in your opening slides, the complexity of government. And I think also you referred to the fact that actually people have trouble actually contacting someone in government that they can even vent their frustration with. And
Like called members of parliament.
no, well, that's a problem. I think a lot of members of parliament don't respond to their emails, but we'll leave that aside. Yeah, I just want to get your comments on, how much volume actually are you seeing of just people like, finally, we've got somewhere that we can go.
794.
Okay.
And also just,
the questions aren't across the table.
and is this aligned, on page 6 of your annual report too, which I really like the diagram, we actually have New Zealanders at the centre. And so do you very much see you actually as an agency that wants to respond to New Zealanders and actually try and deal with their issues? And is that part of the reason you've had so many calls?
It's just
Yes,
bizarre.
it
Well,
is.
actually, the tip line, that has been, again, we have actually really enjoyed the tip line. We've loved it. It's been far more successful
until
than we
now.
expected it to be, okay?
Yeah.
70% of the people who raise tips with us say that they have not raised them before. And actually 80% of the tips are actually from individuals, they're not from businesses.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of the fact that actually kind of New Zealanders are coming to us about the issues that matter to them. And I think it gives government and it gives the public service a different lens, because actually, what is important to one person may not be, saving millions of dollars and be, the nub of the economy, but to that person it is. And 90+% of New Zealand is small businesses. And we're really pleased that they have also been engaging with us and they're getting a voice and feeling that they're being listened to. And look, at the end of the day, we're not here to make a difference. That's what we focus on all the time, making a difference. And that's part of the triage process. What difference can this make? And sometimes it's not the economic value. Sometimes it is the regulatory burden relief. That actually just means that people can spend their time doing other things. I mean, we actually did have a 1-year celebration, and actually Paul's daughter made a cake for the red tape tip line 1 year on, and of course it had red tape around it.
How much did the cake cost?
Exactly, his daughter made it, so
Yeah, very good.
Anyway, but no, I do want to share one little story, because a member of staff came forward and said actually that the changes that we had made in conjunction with the Ministry of Justice around wills, so probate, had actually directly positively impacted her when her grandmother had died. So,
Okay, just for as a public service announcement, given we're talking a lot about this tip line, just give it to us again how people can access it. Just quickly.
So you just go onto our website and you'll find a button that says report a red tip issue.
Okay, that easy. Okay, Dr. Megan Woods.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. And I do note this is the first time that your agency has been before this committee for scrutiny. It is the job of this committee to scrutinise public spending. We're not asking you to go around with the clipboard, but it is our job to examine how spending is being allocated across an agency and what results New Zealanders are getting. So a supplementary to my colleague, Dr. Duncan Webb, and his question around the cost of the tip line. You can't tell us how much running the tip line costs. So my questions, my supplementary questions around what systems do you have in place within your ministry to track spending if you are unable to tell this committee how much running the tip line costs? Because quite frankly, that is concerning if your agency lacks those systems.
So actually, our agency has very good systems for tracking costing, and in our but that's been externally validated by the auditors, who gave us two very goods and a good in our audit ratings, and that's relatively unusual across the public service. And what they did say to us, they were very pleased, given that we were a relatively new organisation. So they found our systems very strong, and that's what they've publicly reported.
Well, what I can say is that what is unusual across the public service is for a chief executive to come to this committee and not be able to tell us something as simple as how much running a service costs. So
But she
given
has
you've
committed
got
to
goods and
additional
very
information.
goods, we look forward to you showing us how good those tracking systems are and receiving that information.
Supplementary.
Yeah, she's
then.
committed to that. Mr. Stevenson.
Well, yeah, if we go to page 2 of the letter from the Auditor General's office, can you just confirm what they said around management control environment, financial systems and controls?
No, we don't need, point of order.
So they gave us
Point of order, Mr.
very
Chair.
good and good.
This is a public letter to the minister.
Oh,
It's not the Auditor
But I'm
General's
asking
advice to us.
Public letter to the minister.
Okay, that's all right.
About the
That's
audit
within,
report.
Just checking,
that's
just
fine.
checking.
No, but,
Fine.
Okay, we are ready for a primary from.
okay.
Or can you just confirm what?
The audit, and I
Yeah.
apologise,
Right,
probably
we'll
was
go to
my
you and
miswording.
Paul.
The audit.
Yeah. Okay, let's
But you got very good.
I got to, Audit New Zealand gave us two very
Yeah.
goods and a good.
Okay. Oh, good. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. If we can go to the Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell, we'll get back onto primaries.
I've got a primary chair.
Ms Moss,
I know, you're next.
you referred to the diagram on pages 4 and 5 of your report. So that's the complex system of regulation. Can we have that diagram up on the screen again? And is it possible to get that up on the screen again? Thanks, Liam. So it's a really interesting one because you've, and I do want to get to the next one as well. You've, who designed this table?
So this work is primarily the Parliamentary Council Office, who we work closely with.
Right, okay.
So they're the
but
owners of the
there's
primary
a
legislation.
particular choice in this, which is to say that regulation is defined by which ministry controls them.
No, wait, that it's not saying it's not defined that way. That's just the way that they chose to group it.
That's still a choice.
Yeah, it's still a choice.
You're
and a
right.
way to
So
demonstrate it.
it's really interesting because then if we go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Liam. Now, this is utterly meaningless. Not only can we not see it, because, don't know about you, but I can't read that. Well, a little bit if I go over there. And again, I think it's done by government agency, is it?
Well, it's partly.
No, it's grouped by government agency.
They've attempted to group it by government agency. Yep.
Yeah, so that's a choice as well. And what it purports to show is that regulation is incredibly complex. But there are alternative ways that this could have been displayed, this information.
Did you want to suggest that? 'Cause we're
Yeah, you
happy
could
to
have done
take
it
that
by
on.
business sector or by small business, or you could have done it by function rather than by agency.
Yep, and that's right. You could have done a
So
lot. You
how
could have
is
come in
this
here and
meaningful? Like how does the previous one actually add any meaningful content to the annual report?
I think what it does is it provides a context and some facts and figures around the number of pieces of primary legislation,
This is content.
who the home agency are that are responsible for that primary
So I don't see any
legislation.
facts and figures on this. I see a series of dots and circles,
It's-
which are not very clear at all.
It's created by some facts, so I'd be very happy to send you the underlying data for
That would be
that.
great. It'd be great to get those facts and figures. How does the amount of regulation in New Zealand compare to the amount of regulation in other countries?
What we do see is it varies, and also varies by sector. Then the other issue that we've got is that what we do
So
see.
that was a straightforward question, wasn't whether it's
There's horses for courses. So, you can't do just a general comment around every country in the world.
The
and how
thing
New
is that
Zealand
when we
sits.
get feedback on the things like the ease of setting up a business in New Zealand, It's very, very straightforward in this country. It can happen quite quickly. We get feedback on the amount of time that people can spend complying with tax law. It's actually less than it is in other countries. It actually does very, very well. And other countries, when we look at regulatory burden, the various surveys we get show that New Zealand actually does very well on that context. Yet this sort of table and that picture there almost seem to show that it's an utter mess. I can't make those two things add up.
Well, what we would say is that it does appear to be very complex, and based on the feedback that we've had through all of our regulatory reviews and also our red tape tip line, that's not the message we're hearing from the New Zealand public, that it's easy to do business and that life is pretty simple and clear when it comes to the rules and regulations.
So that's very anecdotal. So, but when we actually look at the amount of time...
1,400 tips, 4 regulatory reviews with very significant stakeholder
Well, it's a complaint
engagement.
line. They're hardly going to
Hang
go.
on,
Just
hang on. Just can we have some common courtesy
I'm
to
going
our
to trading
official here,
economics
please?
here. I'm going to trading economics here, and they rank the ease of doing business in New Zealand. Would you like to hazard a guess where New Zealand
Is
ranks?
this in the annual report?
Yes. Okay.
Where New Zealand
I don't,
ranks?
is this, yeah,
Would you
Mr.
like
Bidwell?
to-
Relevance at all?
Give me a moment, please. I would like to hazard a guess as to where New Zealand sits on the table of the ease of doing business in New Zealand amongst the 200 or so economies in the world.
We're not playing a pop quiz here, are we?
But I'd just like to do. Would you like to?
Don't tell us.
Shall I tell you?
You tell us.
Right, we rank number 1 in terms of the ease of doing business. Yet you've presented a picture here of extraordinary complexity.
Well,
I cannot make those.
Okay, well,
Okay,
please
well,
define
that's
the
your
ease
view.
of doing
That's
business
fine.
then.
That's
What's the
fine.
point?
What's the ease of doing business?
Mr. Chair, this is-
Okay, Dr. Russell,
Out
can
of
we
order
get,
for
have you got any?
Dr. Russell is
can
going to
we
make
get
it. She has to define what the ease of doing business is.
Well, I don't know, but I am.
Well, there we go.
Can we've got another sub,
According to the
Dr. Russell?
latest World Bank
Yeah.
annual rating.
Okay.
So
So
Okay.
outline what the ease of doing
Okay, have we
business
got
is.
another sub?
This ranked number 1 in rank 1 among 190
Yeah.
economies.
Okay, we've got a point of order. Point of order,
According to the latest
Ryan Ham-
World Bank
Point of
annual
order.
rating.
Can't define what that is.
Chair, this is an annual review
Yeah.
hearing, and we're going on to all the stuff about stuff that's actually not
And so
related to the
presented
12-month period.
In the accounts is this extraordinarily complex picture.
In the annual
that I think
report.
is misleading.
You've made that
in
point.
terms of the
Okay, that
complexity
point's
of
been made.
questions in New Zealand.
Yep, that point's been made. Anything else, Dr.
I will
Russell?
do.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, we're going to go to Ryan Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. Really appreciate this. Now, to this CEO, I do apologise. I want to get your name.
Grania rhymes with
Grania.
Sonia.
Grania,
It's a
thank
good
you.
way of remembering
Ms.
it.
Moss.
Oh, that's good to know.
Thank you. No, I do appreciate that. And I personally enjoy the diagram because it explains the complexity of
Me too.
government and regulation to the layperson. My question is actually around, and you put it in your annual report on 22, you've done a case study of making things better for family. And I think you alluded to it in your opening remarks about one of the more pleasant things that the agency's done in the last 12 months. I was wondering if you could expand on what was the problem and the problem definition and the solution that we've now achieved.
Yeah. So on that, I mean, the submitter came forward to our tip line and just said that they felt that, they'd had a loved one pass away and that they had an awful lot of paperwork to do, and that they thought that the kind of probate threshold appeared to be disproportionate to the amount of money that was left in the estate. So we worked with the Ministry of Justice and looked at the current settings and found that they were indeed disproportional and out of date. So the regulatory burden was being placed at a finance number that was just too low. And we've worked with the Ministry of Justice to increase that. So the regulations themselves are staying the same. It's about the implementation of the regulation and when it proportionally applies.
Yeah.
So, Again, I've shared the story, but actually one of our staff came and said that actually had ended up helping one of their family members.
Right. And just a follow up from that, in terms of the recommendations that you put through, is there a portion or a trend line so far that's been secondary legislation that a minister can do by order in council, or has there been some that's triggered primary legislation changes?
So it has been a range. So some of it has been primary legislation, some of it has been secondary, some, as you say, things like order in council. The other pieces that we've had is we've found that sometimes actually the guidance that has been issued by people has been adopted almost as a secondary regulation and then is not clear. So actually, if we look at the changes to the anti-money laundering gift cards, we actually were able to make that change through a guidance change issued by DIA. So what we do look at is what are the avenues, and that's part of the triage process as well, and the investigation. If it needs change, then what are the avenues for change? And we try to use all of the options that
Thanks,
are available.
Chair, and just with the supplementary, because I know we're in a scrutiny period of review, but are there, in that period starting to be any emerging new trends that you think are low-hanging fruit, either secondary or primary?
I think there is quite a few that are coming through our system. I mean, there's a lot of, however, I do want to acknowledge that the government is doing work across a number of regulatory systems that we work alongside other agencies. So, I mean, one of the big ones we get is around the building consent. So, I think the garden sheds change is probably in next year's annual review. We've worked to change some of the scaffolding guidance as well, which would help builders. We're working on fire egress and things like that. So we do see some themes coming out, and there is quite a lot around the building and consenting process.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a sup there from Nancy Lou.
Thank you, Chair. My supplementary question is, from your last over a year of work in the ministry, what are some of the learning points that will, I think, set you on a better track in the next year for better efficiency, better productivity? And just by the way, very subjectively, I'm a big fan of diagrams and graphs, so I really liked your diagram. Thank you.
Look, I mean, I do want to, say to the committee, there is absolutely learnings from the last year. There's things that we can do better and more efficiently. I think when we set up the red tape tip line, I know we keep coming back to that, we had no idea how successful it would be. What we have done is made that much more structured and actually been more proactive about the questions that we're asking New Zealanders. So that is actually helping reduce the time and to actually go through all the tips. I think our regulatory reviews, I think there's a couple of things that we've done really well there. One of the things that we did is all of the terms of reference were actually put out for consultation before the work started. And I think that meant that you had a more holistic view of what the problem was from both regulated parties and regulators and, for example, NECE, parents and whānau. So I think that was a real strength. But again, the volume that we got back, we probably were slightly surprised at. I think we also took an awful lot of care to get back to submitters, and we weren't maybe as efficient in that. We spent a lot of time talking to people. I think we've been a bit more upfront about asking proactive questions about nailing in on what the problem definition is. I don't know, Paul, what other learnings do you think we've had?
I think one of the key learnings from the tip line is, while a lot of the issues have been around the Resource Management Act, the Building Act, anti-money laundering, if you step back, about 45% of them, the local government is actually the regulator. And so there's a real opportunity for us to actually, how do we build the capability, help build the capability of local government? And so one of our other teams, our system capability team, have a range of initiatives underway to actually build regulator capability in terms of their regulatory practice. Because actually, I'd say half the issues that we identify aren't primary ledger or secondary ledger, it's actually regulatory practice. That's where the issue is. And there's real opportunities for us to actually have meaningful impact in that space. And so the system capability team have a key role to play over the many years to come with regards to actually building that capability. And we've started up an initiative called Rig Room, which has a range of quick user guides that people can easily pick up and use. We've had over 5,000 downloads of those since that went live. We have some modules on there that for regulators to actually help with their training, and that's being implemented by the CAA, DOC, and someone else. Customs have actually built it into their training schedules. And that's been, I think we've had about just 1,400 of those modules completed. And if someone was to go out and go through a professional organisation to have those done, that's probably a $600 kind of little course to do. So there straight away is $1 million we've saved the public service, because all of those regulators are actually funded through local government. And so there's huge opportunities in that space as well. So that's some of the key things we're seeing there.
I just actually would like to augment that point from Paul. And again, And some of you might be old enough to remember this, but back in the 80s, there was a song by Bananarama and Fun Boy 3 called It Ain't What You Do, It's the Way That You Do It. And what we have found is the feedback.
We're quoting Bananarama.
Yeah, the feedback that we're getting from regulated parties is often about it's the way that it's done. And that actually is as important as the regulation itself. And probably what that does mean for us is really focusing how we can improve that area. That's probably an area that we hadn't maybe focused on enough in very early days of the ministry.
Okay, well, Bananarama has debuted at Scrutiny Week.
Yeah.
We're going to go to Dr. Duncan Webb.
Look, thanks. I want to talk a little bit about performance reporting with reference to a particular example. But one of the things that I've heard a number of times, and I just think it's worth clarifying is, and you do it in your PRs as well, is that you say, we did this and we stopped that, or we changed this. For clarity, you're just an advisory agency, and it's the agencies themselves. Justice, for example, who changed their probate rules, quite a good change. You advised them around that, but they made the change, didn't they?
Well, I think you also need the support of ministers to make the changes as well. So is it a team effort? Absolutely. We work alongside other government agencies and also ministers. And yeah, you have to gain support from elsewhere for your recommendations.
Yeah. I mean, you recently put out a PR, you know, and I follow you on LinkedIn and so on, very active, saying that you've achieved up to, in fact, you referred to it in your opening, up to $337 million in benefits. And I did have a look around and try to look behind that on your website. I couldn't actually find any analysis around that.
We'll be very happy to talk through it.
No. I just want to, I mean, I'm sure there's analysis behind it somewhere, but I think the time for that, I'll ask for that later. We'll get that. But if we look at, for example, my favourite topic, which is flower dust standards, where you say you stop unworkable new limits. So that's the one where MB were consulting on change and you had input into that consultation. That's what happened, isn't it?
There were a number of conversations that we were involved in that led to a pause being placed on the changes.
Yeah. And so how can you claim, which you do, that you saved up to you stopped it and you saved up to 18 million in costs for bakeries when all you did was consult with MB, and I've got your docs, and have an exchange around it and then not make the change? How is that a saving when there was no certainty the change was going to be made anyway?
So, I mean, at the end of the day, we did make an intervention that changed the outcome that was potentially proposed. So, yeah.
Well, that first of all, you had an input into a consultation about what they were considering. Secondly, they're still considering it, aren't they?
What they are considering is much broader than just that. They're actually looking at what I understand, and I really apologise, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's what it stands for, but those WES standards, I think they're taking a step back and looking at them in totality across a number of sectors and industries.
And I must say, I was a wee bit concerned about accuracy in your PR when you said, we met with industry stakeholders in WorkSafe and researched international standards in Australia, the UK and the US, and our analysis showed the proposed standard was misaligned. By misaligned, did you mean New Zealand standards had far more flour in the air than Australia and the US? Is that what you mean? Because that's what it is.
The proposed new standard was misaligned to other international jurisdictions.
Well, our current standard is double that of Australia and 5 times that of Canada, which your own documents show.
Yeah, and we were looking at the proposed new standard, which would have been 0.2, when I think Australia is 0.5, if I remember correctly.
And Canada is 0.2. I just find that actually quite misleading. And when you say you saved whatever the 18 million, and the MB website identifies this, how did you factor in lung disease, asthma, and respiratory disease into your costings?
So What might be really helpful for the committee at some point is I would actually think it'd be helpful for the committee to hear from Kevin Counsell, our chief economist, who actually developed the analysis that's behind all of the numbers that are not just linked to that, but also to the other regulatory changes we've made. We've also had that work peer reviewed by Motu.
But we currently have a flour dust standard, which is double that in Australia, double that in the US, and 5 times that of Canada. MB's guidance says that too much flour dust causes lung disease. Can you just tell me that in terms of your costing and your benefits, you included negative health outcome?
I'd be very happy to let the chief economist take you through how we've approached and what the process has been, and then the peer review for all of the work that we have done that has been published, and those numbers.
But you can't answer that question at the moment.
Well, what I'm saying is I'm really happy to hand over to somebody else.
Well, that's Kevin there, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kevin Counsell, Chief Economist. So to answer your question specifically, yes, we looked at the costs based on changes in occupational asthma that might come from a change between the factual and the counterfactual analysis and our cost benefit analysis.
Right, so there's a negative number by not changing it.
With the data we had available, we weren't able to put a quantity on that. But what we do, and what is common in cost benefit analysis, is to use quantitative monetary measures where you can, and to make other pieces of analysis where you can't quantify things transparent and report those.
Right, so when you've got a PR that says 18 million, health benefits aren't kept, or disbenefits aren't captured in that 18 million.
Health benefits are captured in the underlying analysis for that.
Right, but not in the number.
Yeah.
And you've had that peer reviewed by Motu, yeah? And can we see that peer review?
Yes,
Well, we will, I'm sure we'd be very happy. We'll just check with them that they're happy to release it.
It's a government, right?
I'm just, the principle's there. I just don't want to commit to something and then Motu say, actually, we wanted to do something different, that's all.
Just supplementary on this. If the changes MB were consulting on and proposed to go ahead, what was the issue?
Well, there were 2 issues. One, there was going to be quite a significant increase.
What time did we go to?
So 2 issues. One was actually that there isn't the technology to actually monitor that level of compliance.
Yeah.
So that was one issue, and the second issue was an increased cost that would be passed on to consumers, and was the cost benefit worth it?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, did you have a sum here?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just have a quick question around cost benefit analysis, leading on from Dr. Webb's questioning. I just wanted to check, the website has essentially a table of figures, and there's also a media release around it. Has the document behind the actual cost benefit analysis or the spreadsheets behind it been released yet?
They haven't been released, but we have them available. Yeah.
I think it'd be good if maybe actually Mr. Counsell actually talked you through some of that. It's great to see the interest in it, some of the approach.
Yeah, so the approach underlying all of that quantification is the cost benefit analysis, the economic methodology, which is an analytical tool.
Yes.
We are looking at identifying and monetizing where possible all costs and benefits. And by that, just to be clear, it's not just financial costs and benefits. So that is anything that goes towards the welfare or well-being of New Zealanders. So we incorporate health costs or health benefits, environmental costs, environmental benefits, any of those sort of non-monetary factors. And economics has really robust tools that come from the peer-reviewed literature, for which there are international standards and which are widely used by agencies overseas for quantifying those sort of things. So where we can, we do that and we incorporate that into our analysis.
Yeah.
So the approach generally is to analyse impacts in terms of things like market failures, in terms of information asymmetries, competition problems, environmental externalities, any of those sort of things. We look for costs in terms of both compliance costs, administration costs in terms of like government departments, costs in terms of distortions to markets or distortions to competition, innovation. We try to monetize those and capture them in an overall metric. using standard kind of economic tools and methodologies. The analysis on the website is then taken over 10 years. So we use a 10-year timeframe because to get a bit beyond that starts becoming a lot more uncertain. But to look at some sort of impact beyond a year, we need to use a reasonable kind of balance of timeframe. And we do things in net present value terms. So that's taking a discount rate. We use Treasury's standard discount rates that they publish. And to reflect the time value of money, we discount everything back to present value terms. So everything's put in present value terms. And then we undertake a number of other things that are part of cost benefit analysis, sensitivity testing, or things like Monte Carlo analysis to address uncertainty and capture that in the overall analysis as well.
Yeah, but why hasn't the underlying document then been released with the table?
I mean, we'd be very happy to look at that. It wasn't, I mean, what we can put on our website, what's user friendly, but if you would like it, I'm sure just we'll take that as a request and we'll come back to you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We're going to go to a primary from Dr. David Wilson.
Yeah, it's almost a supplementary now after however long we waited.
Oh, as long as it's not on the tip line. Let's not start that one.
Let's exclude the tip line from this question. On regulatory impact analysis, your focus is on proving the way agencies can assess the impacts of regulations.
Yeah.
That's great. And you've also said that impact statements are only produced where needed. So, you know, as a group here, we get RISs all the time.
Yeah.
We get other help in terms of what the costs of things may be and how they're related to other pieces of legislation. Very pleased to hear that you're using quite sophisticated benefit cost analysis and also economic impact and financial modelling and so on and so forth. So my question is really this, because that actually gives me some additionality around what your agency is doing to what we would normally get. What are the other things, excluding the tip line?
Well, I think some of the other things are the ability to speak to regulators and regulated parties in terms of that training and development that Paul talked about. That is definite additionality. Those, for example, the reg room did not exist before. Those quick guides did not exist before. And we've had international recognition on the quality of that work. So that's additional. The other piece that goes alongside that is we've had over 20 requests to either meet with boards or agencies in terms of talking about their regulatory strategy capability, where they think their weaknesses are, what they need to be doing to get better. That's additional. There wasn't somebody sitting who had a view of the system who was able to provide that advice. I think then the other additionality is the actual sector reviews. So those sector reviews that we've undertaken, so we've completed 3, we have 3 ongoing at the minute. That gives an opportunity for an independent agency to listen to all of the different perspectives, look at the data, look at the facts and analyse things, look internationally, apply models as appropriate and provide independent recommendations for improvement. And, you know, what we have found is that those improvements have started to flow through. So if we look at the agricultural and horticultural, I mean, what we've seen from MPI, and yes, we accept that we worked with MPI, but MPI, I think, would tell you that they worked really well with us, and a lot of the facts and figures that we brought to them, a lot of the context that we brought and the action plan that we've brought has brought a reduction in the application queue of 30% since we did the regulatory review. I think those things are additional. We're making changes and we're helping people prioritise but see a way forward.
Quick supplementary, Chair. So if we were to look at something along the line of regulation around health and safety, and we ran some rulers over this in terms of BCA, financial modelling, cost to the economy, and we're trying to achieve a balance between safety and allowing increased productivity, do you think what you would provide would give us a clearer answer to that question?
I think we would be able to, with the tools and skills we've got now, provide a perspective on data and information that could be considered. I think, however, on that space, there's lots of other people providing data and information as well.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wilson. Dr. Rusk?
Oh, thank you. I'm interested in your various case studies, and one we haven't talked about yet is the medical conferences. you claim that 2 of the largest medical conferences are confirmed they're coming to New Zealand in 2026. Is that directly because of the change you made?
And that's what we've been told, yes, because they previously would not have committed to coming to New Zealand because they wouldn't be able to undertake the work that they wanted to do.
So who told you that?
So the actual conference organisers let Business New Zealand know who informed us. And actually they put out a press release as well.
That was Business New Zealand?
No, the conference organisers put out a press release and then they indicated the number of people that would be coming as well. So that's come directly from them.
Right. So it was specifically the change that you made that meant the conferences came here and nothing else.
Well, that's what we've been told in terms of our the information that we've received.
Okay. Thank you. That's really good to know. You say it's worth it's stopping millions of dollars of medical conferences and events in New Zealand. Did you do a quantification of the?
A quantification was actually done by business events.
Yeah, BEIA. I can't
Yeah.
recall what it stands for.
Yeah.
We also did our quantification. It's on the website.
Right. Okay. And where did the information come to you from in order to get that change through in the first place?
That information came from Business New Zealand.
So it wasn't from the tip line?
No, it wasn't from the tip
Tip
line.
line? No. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's no wrong door. Everything's a tip. So, no wrong door. So it actually came in an email direct to me.
Right. Okay. So there's actually various ways that information could get to you in terms of doing stuff.
Yeah.
So in terms of the various,
however, the red tape tip line team are the people that work that up. So yes, I passed that on to them.
Internal tip.
We've just said there's a red tape tip line team.
Well, there's a ministry team. There are some investigators that work on the red tape tip line. But what I said earlier was that has peaks and troughs.
Right. Okay. So in terms of the case studies in your annual report, which I presume are the things you're proudest of, how many of those came through the tip line?
So the case studies in the annual report. So the medical conferences that was worked on by Paul's team on the team that looks at those. Let's see what else is in the annual report. Gift cards was worked on by that team. Medical conferences, Florida, Buy Now, Pay Later was actually jointly worked on by the policy team. And
But I asked you how many of them came through the tip line as things to work on.
So I was trying to answer that in terms of a number of these have been through the tip line in terms of the.
That's where your attention was first drawn to them.
I would have to go back and check that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So it's just, these presumably the things you're proudest of. So it's interesting to know how much they are coming through the tip line or whether they're coming from different sources.
So the vast majority of things are coming directly into us as a ministry, yeah. So
rather than through the tip line.
Well, you can come through the tip line or for example, in the medical conferences that came direct to me and I passed it on to our tip line team.
So, well, yeah. So what I'm trying to work out is, there's a number of things you've worked on and you say you're getting evidence around, but, there's obviously a number of ways that stuff comes to your attention.
Yep.
What, in terms of the things you've actually done work on, it would be good to know which of those were things that came through other sources, or like you said, directly from Business New Zealand, I think was the previous one, or how many of them were directly kicked off because of something coming in through your tip line.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we've got 2 more primaries. We've got Dr. Megan Woods and Dr. Duncan Webb.
Thank you. And my question is a more technical one, and it compares you to other central agencies. So what we see is most other central agencies within government use a disaggregated or multi-category appropriation rather than the single broad output that you do. And I guess this ties into the questioning that we had earlier in the committee around what funding was allocated to different functions, because what those multi-category appropriations do allow those other agencies to do is to show how different work streams what funding's going to them, how they contribute to the core purpose. But importantly, it allows Parliament, i.e. this committee, to test the performance of that expenditure. And that is the purpose of what we're doing. So I guess, given that your ministry has several distinct roles, you've got advice on new regulations, system-wide stewardship, sector reviews and capability building, why are you operating under that single output and not adopting an MCA approach like other central agencies are? And are you considering adopting more of an MCA approach so there can be scrutiny of where the spending is going? Because at the moment, you're just telling us there's $20 million that you've got, and we're not getting any clarity as a committee on where or how that money's being spent.
So when we were set up, it was with one appropriation, and that was because it was a new ministry. I think what will be interesting is obviously you as a committee are considering performance reporting across the public service, and that may well be something that you will want to give advice on in terms of how small the appropriations could and should be. And we'll happily work in with central agency colleagues and primarily Treasury around what they would recommend. We're working with the auditors, and we are planning to redo our strategic intentions earlier than planned. So that could be something that forms part of that conversation.
Sure. So have you discussed with either Treasury or your minister the fact that you would like to give some transparency around how this money is being spent by adopting an MCA approach?
No, we haven't.
Why haven't you discussed that with Treasury or your minister? Surely, as you're coming up to a revised SOI, a statement of intent, this is exactly the kind of conversation that you would be having around how we could get that transparency of spending.
I think we've been developing a number of tools, and I think the cost benefit analysis that our chief economist outlined has been one of those inputs. So I think we're still gathering inputs.
Yeah. Accepted, but a CBA is an entirely different approach than having a multi-category appropriation. That is a tool that Parliament needs so they can scrutinise the expenditure. The way you're set up means that Parliament cannot properly scrutinise your expenditure, unlike other central agencies that do split their appropriations across function.
Yeah, I mean, a number of the other central agencies have been going for a lot longer, and they're mostly all bigger. But in terms of actually putting it on the agenda, very happy to take that on board from the committee, and also look forward to your recommendations. You talk about performance reporting in the public service.
So will you raise this with the minister or with the Treasury?
Very happy to raise it with, I'll probably raise it with Treasury in the first instance, see what they think.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Webb?
Thank you. I've got some questions just around kind of the performance of the ministry in a administrative sense almost. Just looking at I asked a question around OIAs and how many complaints have been made. You didn't actually directly respond to that. Are you concerned about the number of OIA complaints that are made in the ministry?
So are we concerned about the number of OIA?
The number of OIA complaints that have been made against the ministry?
No, we're not actually. So what we do have in terms of, we have the highest number of OIAs per staff across the public service. And we've dealt with a number of, a very high volume of OIAs, but I'll hand over to Paula who can talk it through.
Thank you. Yes, as Grant has said, we do respond to a very high number of OIAs. We've prepared responses for over 1,700 OIAs since our establishment, to give some context. And in fact, in the last 6 months of the 24-25 year, we received 695 OIAs and also responded to 46 OIAs from MPs as well. We have been notified of 4 ombudsman's complaints, and only one of those decisions was adverse for the ministry.
Well, hang on, just got stats there, because you referred me, you didn't respond to my question, but you seem to know what the answer was. But on this document, which is from the Ombudsman's website, it says that the Ministry for Regulation had 68 complaints.
We were notified of 4 complaints from the Ombudsman, and we worked with them.
In the answers to written questions, I asked how many complaints, and you said here's a website, go and find it yourself. So I did. And the document here says the Ministry for Regulation had 68 ombudsman's complaints. Are you concerned that you have the third highest number of complaints of all agencies subject to the OAA?
Sorry, I was just going to say that we don't hold an accurate reflection of the Ombudsman's complaints because we're only made aware of cases where the Ombudsman has received multiple complaints. They will bundle that and send it to us, so it can be about the same issue. But I think if you put that in context of the number of OAAs that we receive, and in fact that we had the highest number of OAAs per 100 FTE across the entire public service, and that includes police.
Well, what's your ratio of, the real ratio is not how many per staff member, it's how many complaints per request. And if you've had 7,000 requests and 68 complaints, that's a 1% complaint rate, isn't it? Is it 1%? Economist. But that's what is very clear is that the Ministry of Justice, for example, in terms of the amount of complaints they get, with 4,000 staff, they got 5 complaints.
I think also, actually, one of my colleagues has helpfully outlined that there's a slight, there's different categories of complaints.
I think probably what would have, I think probably what's happened here is that there would have been a significant number of complaints of potentially of that 68, I'm not contesting those figures, that related to the consultation processes potentially associated with the bill or with our prior policy work on the bill. And I think what happened, if I recall correctly, is that there was a degree of bundling of those. And whilst a significant number of them were found to not have any merit by the Ombudsman, we probably only had one engagement in relation to a large number of equivalent complaints.
Right. Okay. Well, look, I'm concerned that you don't know how many complaints have been made against you. In terms of regulatory impact statements, in terms of your own performance, you've done 3 pieces of work that require regulatory impact statements, and you did not pass the quality measure on 2/3 of them. Why is the ministry, which is the Ministry of Regulatory Quality, not meeting standards of regulatory quality? This is your answer to question 26 and the additional questions. Of the regulatory impact statements prepared by the Ministry for Regulation, what percentage have complied in full with the quality assurance standards? And the answer is 66% received partially meets rating, which is not fully meeting. So what's going on if the ministry, which has got the big stick for other departments, can't follow its own rules?
I think the QA methodology that is used, that we use on ourselves, as well as obviously being stewards of that, the rest of the system, does pull out a range of factors that might mean that a regulatory impact statement does not meet or partially meets, in our case twice. And I think, to be honest, I would say that shows good scrutiny of ourselves in terms of making sure that we're able to run high quality policy processes. We did hold ourselves to a very high standard as we did the quality assessment.
One of the reasons for not meeting it is that for the Regulatory Standards Bill, you didn't explore all options. Isn't that kind of policy 101? Look at the problem and explore options for solving it?
You're right. I mean, that is policy 101. You should look at all options. And one of the reasons that the RIS for the bill, which is obviously one of those ones that you're referring to there, did not fully get a compliant RIS, as I say, as you break out the reasons why a RIS, when you do the quality impact quality analysis stage, there's a raft of reasons why it might not meet. Some of those are within the agency's control in terms of the processes that we run internally. Some of those are as a result of the policy process which is being run and decisions that are being made by ministers in terms of setting the overall framework. It's one of the points, just to step back from that, and rethinking the system as we're doing at the moment, it is one of the things that we're focused on, is how and when does that quality analysis apply and what is it actually measuring in terms of agency performance versus the other factors that are in play.
In just a matter of detail, for the record, the consistency accountability statements that are going to come in, they're not, regulatory impact statements will persist or they'll be replaced.
Those decisions are currently for ministers in terms of
So it's
what
being-
the rest of the system would look like.
Doing away with regulatory impact statements is being considered.
We are currently looking at what all the tools are. What I can say is that there's a strong desire to retain a level of impact analysis that ministers will consider as they're making decisions on the way through. But we are reshaping what the tools are in order to fit the consistency accountability statements into the process and ensure that we don't have duplication.
I see Megan's got something.
Just as long as you've finished, Duncan, have you finished?
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that level of impact analysis? Is that a change from the current regulatory impact statement?
It's more a streamlining, to be honest, so that we're making sure that the new consistency accountability.
Sorry, can you lean into your microphone a bit?
Apologies. It's more of a streamlining so that we're making sure that you don't end up with duplicative or repetitive content coming through the system. So the fundamentals of ensuring that high quality impact analysis need to remain. In fact, that is our mission, to make sure that agencies are still doing that effectively. In fact, we're trying to lift the quality of impact analysis across the system.
So what's the timeline around that piece of work?
So ministers are due to make decisions on that shortly, and we're anticipating new circulars in the new year.
So that's before Christmas, making decisions on scrapping or changing the RISs?
Well, ultimately those, no, I think just to clarify, I haven't suggested that there is going to be a scrapping.
No, it's and or changing. Yeah.
Changing of the process so that we get streamlining with the new products and make sure that we still get high quality impact analysis coming through.
That's before Christmas?
Those decisions are imminent, yes.
Okay. Todd, did you have a, Todd Stevens?
Oh, sorry, and that's a cabinet decision, is it?
In order to do this, we would need to replace the relevant cabinet circular. So yes, it's a cabinet.
Okay.
Todd Stevens.
Right, just, I think, you talked a little bit about this, but I'm just keen. I mean, obviously at the moment, you've got 4 key outcomes that you looked at in your annual report: high quality regulation, greater transparency, public trust and confidence in regulation, increased capability. Just keen for you very briefly to outline how you went against those 4 measures in the period under review. And then I think you also mentioned that you're looking at a refresh. So yeah, were there some learnings from those 4 outcomes that you are able now to kind of refine and take into the new financial year?
Yeah. So I'll probably deal with maybe the last one and first in terms of that capability across the workforce, because that is something that we will be taking in. We'll probably be putting more emphasis on. That will be the learning, the appetite for that, and how well we've been received in terms of being able to make a difference has been very high. So I would say we have probably, we are definitely filling a need that was greater than we had anticipated across the system.
So just for clarity, that's the other departments and agencies you're working with have driven that.
And also, and regulators as well. Yeah.
They're asking for your help. Brilliant.
They are asking for our help. So if we look at so the 4 that you said, sorry, is it just
4 current ones, like high quality regulation, greater transparency, public trust and confidence in regulation. These are kind of your outcomes that you're looking at.
So I think public trust and confidence, look, we need to continue to do work, but again, the high level of engagement we've had, the positive feedback that we've had,
the tip line,
the tip line. Hey, don't you love talking about the tip line? But the guy who went, there was 3 people who contributed to the tip line on the garden sheds, and one of them was very open on the television around, actually these people listen to you, come and talk to us, and we got a lot of really positive feedback about that. Sorry, go for the next one.
High quality regulation, which I think again leads back a little bit into what was being discussed previously.
I think we can definitely do more work there. As a new agency, we haven't been involved in every new regulatory change in government. We've been building our capacity. I think we have added value in certain examples, such as the buy now, pay later. But I think there's more work to be done on that as we basically have developed the tools and techniques.
So,
And then you had a fourth one, sorry.
Oh, that was greater transparency, yeah. which is
Okay, I mean,
around the
the
amount.
transparency thing, we have, yeah, I mean, a lot of our work, we've tried to be as transparent as possible and, being active about, creating our website and putting up, proactively reporting on the red tape tip line every quarter. So, yeah.
Okay, we've got a sub and then we might wind it up.
thank you, Mr. Chair, for that. Some of the work you're doing, first of all, I want to say some of what you're doing is good. And a lot of regulatory changes.
Thank you, appreciate
Parties
that.
across the board would support at least some of them. And the stuff you've done around calling out people who are not meeting quality standards is good. I think that's a really good initiative. I guess, though, it does raise some concerns because if you look at proposals that require a regulatory impact statement in the last year, but should have had it but didn't have one, it's more than double the year before. The number of legislative proposals exempt from regulatory impact, double. And the list kind of goes, and there's a whole lot of impact statements that don't meet quality standards, which is a worsening of quality of legislation and regulation than prior to when you existed. So in terms of your performance, how are you going to essentially measure that you are having an impact on regulatory quality when metrics like that are going backwards?
I think that's why there's a range of metrics, and that's what would be helpful about the strategic intentions, being able to refresh those metrics, working alongside other central agencies, working alongside the auditors. So it's a really good opportunity to take stock and say, how do we measure all across the ministry and the multiple work streams that we have?
So, I mean, do you think if that trend continues, that will show poor performance on your part?
I think there's a number of changes to that system that are proposed, and I think we should be measured on the effective implementation of those changes to ensure that high quality regulatory decisions are being made transparently.
That was quite an equivocation because the meeting of quality standards, including new consistency accountability statements, is a really objective test of whether regulation is being done well. Can you not accept that we don't see improvements there, that we should be looking to you for an explanation?
I think we've got a lot of things going on at the ministry. There's a lot of ways of making differences to New Zealanders. There's a lot of ways that regulation impacts on people's lives. And I do think we need to continue to measure the impact that we're having as an agency.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Ms. Moss and your executive team. Thank you. Congratulations in the past 18 months. And
Thank you.
we appreciate you appearing before us today and engaging with us. Members, we're going to just quickly go into private just to talk about post-hearing questions and the likes.